Hello everybody, it's Tuesday, it's 3 o'clock. You know what that means? That means it's Tech Tuesday. Today I'm going to be going through some of the latest stories in broadband. Be right back. Thanks for joining me. I'm Rick Usey here at Zecorum, and today I'm going to be talking about the latest in broadband news. These are articles that I kind of curate for broadband providers, so hopefully something that you guys will find interesting. So let's get right to it. This just actually happened yesterday, I think. Mid-America Cable Show goes virtual. So Mid-America Cable Telecommunications Cable Association is a regional association, and they were planning on doing a live in-person show this year, and just the other day decided to go ahead and make that virtual. We were actually attending, and we're not going to attend now, or we're going to be exhibiting. So it'll be interesting to see how this goes over. In 2020, this happened a lot, obviously, and when we participated in some virtual shows, we did not find them very useful for us. So, as I said, we're not going to be doing that this year. So it'll be interesting to see how this goes over now that people have had this opportunity to experience virtual show, those that have tried it. So here you see Mid-America Cable Telecommunications Association said Monday that it will take the upcoming 2021 Mid-America Cable Show virtual, citing increases in COVID-19 cases and corporate travel restrictions. So I don't know how much of it's related to that second part of that, where maybe they found that some corporations have again cut back on their travel, and they're not finding they're going to have enough people there. The show was scheduled to be held in person September 15th through 16th in Omaha. They said they plan to move to virtual panels, breakout sessions, and awards to a series of online sessions. So again, I don't know how it'll go over. We'll have to see if they have any success with that. These are the particular states that are included in the association that you see here. So some good-sized states here in the middle of the country, including Texas. RDOF waiver requests roll in after FCC warning. I mentioned this in a broadcast a couple of weeks ago, where the RDOF auction completed, and there were a lot of companies that put in their long-form applications, which they won some areas that they could then build out broadband. They get subsidies for that. They bid in that reverse auction, and it turns out that the FCC looked at a lot of those and decided they were maybe not appropriate in some cases, because there's already good broadband there, and they don't want to waste the money. Now the question becomes, why was that included in the census blocks that these folks bid on, if that area was already covered, or if it didn't make any sense to have those census blocks available. So they issued a warning to companies. Normally the FCC, if you put in your long form application and you say you're going to bid, then they have fines if you don't perform. Let's say you try to perform and you don't, you just pull out. You can't even pull out because they can charge you $3,000 per census block if you do that. So they sent out a notice that said, hey, there's lots of areas where maybe there could be there's already broadband, or it doesn't make sense to be putting broadband there. So we will accept waivers from people who decide to pull out based on those reasons. So a lot of people have taken advantage of that, either because they really realized that these were not areas they wanted to bid on, or in some cases maybe because they kind of got over their head in this. Because again, if you bid, you didn't know. I mean, you were bidding in various census blocks, and you didn't know what you were going to win and what you weren't. So maybe you overbid in areas. We don't know. So here you see the FCC recently urged operators to ensure money awarded to them in the RDOF Phase 1 auction wouldn't go toward unnecessary coverage. They responded with a wave of waiver requests. As a result, millions in broadband funding could be left on the table. Top RDOF winners, including LTD Broadband, Windstream, Frontier, and Starry, were among those seeking to relinquish winning bids without penalty after receiving warning letters from the FCC last month. Collectively, the waiver requests covered thousands of census blocks in at least 26 states. The FCC issued those letters to a total of 197 of these RDOF winners, flagging potentially redundant funding in a total of over 15,000 census blocks. Operators had until the 16th of August to request those waivers. LTD Broadband requested waivers for more than 3,000 census blocks. They were the top bidder in the RDOF auction. They won $1.3 billion in funding to provide service to 528,000 locations across those 15 states. And a lot of people have complained about that, saying they felt LTD didn't have the resources to be able to carry that out. In the filing, LTD stated the blocks it's seeking waivers for consist of locations that are already served by one or more service providers that offer 25 by 3 megabits per second broadband, or otherwise raise significant concerns about wasteful spending, for example, an airport or parking lot with no locations. And again, I question why the FCC had maps that had places that were already served, because this phase 1 is supposed to be totally unserved areas. And then also, why would you include parking lots in this? SpaceX, Starlink bid on lots of locations, and they bid wherever they could because they already have satellites in the air, and they're going to have more satellites in the air. So they just bid wherever. And they have a lot of those locations that are in urban areas, but they're parking lots or areas that really don't need broadband. Starry, which was 9th on the RDIF winner list with $268.9 million in funding, sought waivers for a total of 121 census blocks. Frontier asked to be released from winning bids covering 37 census blocks in California, Pennsylvania, etc. You can see the states there. Virginia, that was just 3. After determining certain census blocks were solely parking lots and portions of airports, while others were made up of large commercial buildings with access to commercial fiber. Frontier was 7th biggest winner in the RDOF auction, and they secured $371 million in support. Windstream put in for waivers on 29 census blocks due to concerns that some of the blocks may have no serviceable locations. Didn't specify which states. The operator won $523 million in the RDOF Phase 1 auction. And then Mediacom is seeking waivers for 24 census blocks in 3 states, and Mid-Continent Communications is asking to return 16 bids in 3 states in areas it said would either be difficult to serve or that may already receive broadband service. So a lot of folks have taken advantage of that. So there's going to be a lot of money left over, which is good. Question is, what happens now? Does the FCC, in areas, if they see that these are areas where maybe they really do need to put funding, will they see if other providers want to come in there, or do they allocate this to phase 2, which would be more underserved areas? We don't know yet. Or do they do something else entirely different with that money? This money comes from the USF, Universal Service Fund. That's that junk fee that you have in your phone bill, and that's meant to help provide, originally it was to provide phone service to rural areas. Now it's more for broadband. Let's see, cable operators continued explosive broadband growth in Q2 and now control 70% of the US wireline high-speed internet market. Overall, wireline broadband connections grew at their highest rate in a decade, except for the blowout quarter of Q2 2020 in the midst of the pandemic. And this is a Leichtman Research Group report. The top 16 wireline broadband providers, accounting for 96% of the U.S. market, added 890,000 customers in the second quarter versus 1.26 million in the second quarter of 2020, as citizens worldwide adjusted their home internet service to account for sheltering-in-place activities. So obviously big boost last year with the pandemic. Lots of people staying home, lots of kids staying home, a lot of people sheltering in place, watching lots of videos, so they wanted to make sure that they had a good broadband connection. You can see here the growth, and again, it's cable companies that have really exploded here, and you can see the major MSOs especially. You've got Comcast added 354,000 in second quarter 2021. Charter exceeded that at 400,000, and you've got these other providers far behind that. You've got Cox next with 50,000, so big increase here. Top MSOs down to Atlantic Broadband. Obviously there's others, smaller operators, but Atlantic Broadband, the smallest one on this list, of 6,847 additions. And then on the phone side, it was significantly lower. You see that the top was AT&T with 46,000. I'm sorry, Verizon, 70,000. Then you've got AT&T, 46,000, and then you've got some losses here with CenturyLink and Frontier, probably due to them having older DSL technology in place that has not been replaced with fiber. So they probably had some subscribers that left their service, especially again during the pandemic when they got home, and parents home, kids home, wanting to stream lots of stuff, and realized that their DSL service wasn't going to cut it. You've got Windstream, TDS, and then Cincinnati Bell, and Consolidated with a loss there of 4,500 subscribers. So cable operators definitely taking advantage of that, which is interesting because you're hearing all about fiber these days. Fiber, 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 especially because of new build-outs. You've got lots of municipalities that are installing fiber. You've got lots of electric membership co-ops, utilities that are installing fiber, but cable operators, and they may not be accounted for here, and certainly a lot of that's new construction, and it's not yet in place. But we'll see. I think we'll see fiber having a big boost here. I just don't know where it's going to land. These are your traditional telecom companies. These are not generally municipalities and utilities that you're seeing here in these kinds of lists. 5G fixed wireless access to surpass 58 million subs by 2026. So this is not talking about 5G mobile. This is talking about 5G fixed wireless. Global tech market advisory firm ABI Research, in its latest report, states that 5G fixed wireless access will be the fastest growing residential broadband segment to increase at a CAGR of 71%, exceeding 58 million subscribers in 2026. The analyst supports the worldwide residential broadband market reached a subscriber base of over 1.1 billion, so that's worldwide in 2020, a 4% increase from the previous year. And of course, they found what you would expect here. Remote working, online learning, e-commerce, and virtual healthcare drove high-speed broadband demand throughout 2020. A significant increase in the use of internet-based home entertainment, such as video streaming and online gaming, also pushed existing broadband users to upgrade their broadband service to a higher tier package. So some people got broadband for the first time, while households without broadband access signed up for new subscriptions. So you had people getting broadband for the first time, or maybe they were relying on their phone and now they wanted a wired connection, or they upgraded their package because they had a lower tier package and they didn't have enough usage, for example, or speed. In addition, many businesses are allowing remote working for some of their employees after the pandemic. So we've seen a little bit of a drop back on broadband usage, but it's definitely stayed above where it was prior to the pandemic. A lot of this has to do with people that are still working at home and just the way people's habits have changed, and maybe their video streaming kinds of things that they've done that they started doing during the pandemic. We would have seen that anyway, so we would have seen that growth in demand on the video streaming side. I think we would have seen some upstream bandwidth growth as more people were telecommuting, but certainly it was the pandemic that accelerated a lot of those things. Broadband operators are investing heavily in expanding higher capacity broadband networks. Mentions here some cable operators continue to invest in an upgrade to the DOCSIS 3.1 specification. We've been seeing that. Mentions DOCSIS 4.0 technology here, although that is basically your larger operators that have been looking at that. And similarly, the new report notes that telcos continue to upgrade their DSL to fiber to the home. As I mentioned, DSL is not really a good technology for high-speed broadband with the way that we need it today, with the kind of content, rich content that we have. And of course, cable operators they may be upgrading their cable plant. Some are doing that. DOCSIS 4.0 is kind of that dividing line, I think. Even DOCSIS 3.1 in some cases for cable operators. Do they continue to upgrade their DOCSIS plant? Because going from DOCSIS 3.0 to 3.1 is a pretty significant upgrade. Going from 3.1 to 4.0 is additional kinds of things that you have to do, more fiber in your plant and that kind of thing. So a lot of operators are making the decision, well, if I'm going to have to be installing fiber further and further to the edge, maybe why don't I just go fiber to the curb, or fiber to the home, I should say. And in some cases, they're doing that. A lot of them are doing it in greenfield opportunities, so it's a lot more expensive to tear stuff out when you've got existing cable plant. But if they're opening up new territories, they're deciding, a lot of them, to do that with fiber. 5G fixed wireless access services are expected to represent 4% of residential broadband services in 2026, growing from less than 1% in 2020. The new study further forecasts that as residential broadband penetration saturates mature markets, competition among broadband operators is likely to create challenges to maintain market share. So as more and more people are getting broadband service and you've got more broadband operators entering into these markets, they're going to start competing with each other. And it mentions here that you want to provide services other than just a dumb pipe in order to be able to maybe keep those subscribers, something that can be sticky, that can help you keep those customers. Providing advanced home networking devices, internet security, and home network self-diagnostics tools can help service providers reduce churn and improve average revenue per user. So you're seeing that a lot. You're seeing more managed Wi-Fi services that operators are doing. That's something that they can provide their customers that's a value add. They still probably charge for it, but it's something that it's nice for customers not have to worry about their wireless connection. Quite often when a customer calls their broadband operator's call center, it's because, and it's about their connection, quite often it's about their Wi-Fi, their in-home Wi-Fi, because they either have the device, the access point placed in the wrong place, or they're moving around too much, they've got it positioned in a cabinet, something like that, or they just don't have enough access points in the home. So quite often it's about the Wi-Fi. So operators are finding it's very beneficial to provide these managed Wi-Fi services because it can reduce calls to the call center. They can actually, with certain tools, they can look into the customer's home network and figure out what the problem is. So that plus internet gaming I mentioned, internet security, they're trying to find additional ways that they can provide value. And of course there's the old things of telephone and video. Those have gone away somewhat, but there also are still opportunities on the digital side. So there's still opportunities for VoIP on voice, not just a traditional landline telephone. And then there's opportunities for IPTV instead of your traditional pay TV services. So those are still things that operators are looking at. Most wireline players pass on FCC's 3.45 gigahertz auction, and here's why. So this is an auction for, speaking of 5G, for 5G, but a lot of wireline players are passing on that, which is interesting. But the reason is because a lot of them have enough spectrum, they believe right now. Cable and wireline players were some of the top bidders in the FCC's CBRS auction last year, but by and large, appear to be sitting out an upcoming sale of adjacent midband spectrum between 3.5 gigahertz and 3.55 gigahertz. So CBRS, that's Citizens Broadband Radio Service, I believe. That's also in this midband spectrum. That auction completed, was very successful. A lot of these folks had bid on that and got spectrum. The nice thing about this mid-spectrum is that it's pretty fast. It's faster than 4G, but it also propagates well. So it goes through, it can go through some walls and trees. You don't have to worry about trees and that kind of thing. Whereas your millimeter wave, very high band spectrum, has very short range, can't go through walls. You need lots of microcells around. So this is a very popular spectrum for fixed wireless. This is set to kick off October 5th. Will include 4,060 flexible use licenses sold in 10 megahertz blocks. No bidder will be allowed to win more than 40 megahertz in a given partial economic area, or a PEA. And that's very similar to CBRS. And when they mention flexible use, it may have the same kind of paradigm in there where CBRS uses a dynamic spectrum sharing. So if there's incumbents already using the spectrum, then there's systems in place to make sure that people can share that spectrum. And if that incumbent has priority that can back off, it may be that some of this is licensed spectrum when it's done and some of it is unlicensed. Again, with the licensed spectrum getting priority over the unlicensed. So we'll have to see how that goes. It'll probably be very similar to CBRS. Many of the companies that took part in the CBRS auction are either content with or still digesting their winnings. For example, Jeff Small, president of Kinetic by Windstream, he said they secured all the spectrum needed to fill its deployment objectives. He explained fixed wireless has a limited role in rural broadband, adding its intent is to pursue fiber-first broadband deployment program and leverage fixed wireless only when fiber to the home cannot be made economically viable. And you're going to see that a lot, where operators that are traditionally doing fiber, they're going to be using fixed wireless when it's just really hard to do fiber. It could be, just the area. Of course, fixed wireless can be hard in areas as well. Line of sight is quite often required. Similarly, Mediacom representative told Fierce, we feel like we want enough spectrum in the CBRS auction to offer a quality fixed wireless product, 100 megabits per second, to unserved and underserved areas, adjacent to our existing wireline network. So again, they're looking at this as being an add-on to their wireline network. Meanwhile, Lumen stated it didn't have a current or proposed product that would require the 3.45 gigahertz spectrum. Both Charter and Comcast have said they plan to use the 3.5 gigahertz airwaves they won in the CBRS sale to deploy their own mobile infrastructure, which can be used to offload MVNO traffic. So they're looking at that for mobile service, cellular service, and MVNO meaning that most of the time what these big MSOs or cable companies would do is they'll kind of lease mobile towers and spectrum from traditional kinds of wireless carriers like T-Mobile or Verizon. So in this case, they can use that CBRS spectrum, which could even use it as unlicensed or licensed, I believe, and then they can use that for their cellular service without having to rely on the other mobile carriers for that. So let's see who has, this is from the FCC, so let's see who has completed applications. You can see here that you're not seeing a lot of names. I'll scroll down here slowly, but there's some I recognize. Hawaii Telephone, I think South Carolina area. LICT, they've got a consortium of 8 or 10 telephone companies that they work with, that they are basically over. Union Telephone's in there. Wamanuchi LLC, you may not recognize, but they are actually bidding. That's how Dish Network is bidding under that name for some reason. So these are the completed applications. Then you've got uncompleted or incomplete, small list here. This Cellco partnership is Verizon. So Verizon is bidding under Cellco, but they currently are listed as an incomplete application, as well as some of these other ones right here. Here's a story about cord cutting. It took top pay TV providers for 1.2 million subs in Q2. The largest pay TV providers in the US, representing about 95% of the market, lost roughly 1.23 million net video subscribers during the second quarter. The good news is that's less than it was last year. Latest figures from LRG said put the total losses at about 275,000 fewer than the 1.5 million subscribers lost in the same quarter in 2020. Over the past year, top pay TV providers had a net loss of about 4.52 million subscribers compared to a loss of 5.46 million over the year prior. The top cable providers combined for a net loss of about 590,000 video subscribers. Comcast accounted for nearly 400,000 of that, while Charter and Cox combined to lose 110,000 subscribers. So while Comcast and Charter have really been doing well in the broadband area, they've lost video subscribers as people have cut the cords. They're tired of maybe prices going up, and they see better options out there for video with streaming, those kinds of things. Satellite and telecom operators lost a net 700,000 subscribers during the quarter compared to a loss of 1.45 million subscribers a year ago. AT&T's premium TV segment, which includes DirecTV, Uverse, and AT&T TV, led the way with 473,000 subscribers lost, but it was better than the 887,000 video subscribers they lost a year ago. The top publicly reporting virtual VMVPDs, VMVPDs, that's hard to say, Hulu Plus, Live TV, Sling TV, and Fubo TV. Doesn't mention YouTube TV, which is a big one, which the group said added about 55,000 subscribers the second quarter compared to 45,000 a year ago. So those would be, when people are cutting the cord, sometimes that's what they're cutting to go to, would be these virtual video production, multi-channel video production, whatever, I forget what it stands for. So a lot of people are going from their MVPDs to their VMVPDs, like Sling and YouTube TV and those kinds of folks. Overall, the top pay TV providers now account for 77.6 million subscribers. The top 7 cable companies have 42.6 million video subscribers. Other traditional pay TV services have about 28.2 million subscribers. The top publicly reporting VMVPDs have about 6.8 million subscribers, so they don't list them all. That may be why YouTube is not in there. Maybe they're not publicly reported for some reason. And speaking of streaming service, this is a big deal for NCTC and Disney. So new Disney deal with NCTC includes Disney Plus, ESPN, and the ESPN Plus. The carriage agreement covers more than 700 small and mid-sized cable operators. So Disney Media Entertainment said it signed a new multi-year distribution agreement with a national cable television cooperative, and that's the NCTC is a cooperative that works with lots of independent telephone companies and cable companies. Started out as all cable companies, but anybody that's providing kind of a pay TV service, what they do is they go to NCTC and they can get that programming. NCTC also has equipment that people can get through there. They've got other kinds of services. So that includes Disney streaming services, Disney Plus, and ESPN Plus, along with its array of broadcast and cable channels. NCTC represents more than 700 small and mid-sized independent cable and broadband operators. The deal expands distribution of Disney's ACC network also. effective September 1st. Disney's Hulu had already been available to some NCTC members, and under this new agreement, they'll be able to link customers directly to Disney Plus and ESPN Plus via their websites. The deal encompasses Disney channels, including ESPN networks, the Disney-branded networks, Freeform, FX, National Geographic, and retransmission of the ABC-owned television stations. So, looks like NCTC and Disney wrapped this all up together. Their usual carriage agreements for some of these traditional channels and local ABC channels, and they put in the streaming component. So this shows you that NCTC is not sitting back and trying to hold the line, and cable operators are doing the same thing. Cable operators want this because they realize, again, we just saw the story about cord cutting, they realize people are cutting the cord and they want to make sure that they can provide an option for their customers where maybe they can still get their traditional cable TV package, but then also access some streaming packages directly through the same interface, or make it very easy to be able to do that. And customers want that. A lot of customers still want the traditional pay TV guide, search for stuff, plus they're adding streaming services. So they like to be able to get that all from one place if they can. It's nice to be able to know that it's included in one price so you don't have all of these different bills that you're paying each month. They like the convenience, and again, this is a way to provide some stickiness if you're a cable operator. So we're seeing cable operators try to do this on their own. The big guys have been doing it, where if you get something like Xfinity, you can watch Netflix, and other, Netflix, probably Hulu, and some other things on these big MSOs. So this provides an opportunity for the NCTC, the cooperative that works with all these smaller independent cable companies, to be able to provide that kind of an option. And lastly, on the video front here, Sinclair and Dish agree to an extension, avoiding a massive blackout for now. Retransmission and regional sports networks at issue. So these guys have been having this kind of public media war, which often happens when there's transmission or carriage rights, those kinds of things in play. You've got the content programming provider that points the finger at the broadband cable TV provider, and then the broadband operator points back at the carriage operator, or at the programming content operator. Each one blames the other, and each one kind of spins the story and tries to get the customers mad at the other. So that's what's been happening, but they did agree to this extension. I think this particular press release was probably from Sinclair because they're the ones that are quoted in here. So even now they're trying to make themselves look good. It says, Sinclair stands willing to continue to negotiate in good faith and to enter into a longer extension to allow for the continued carriage of our channels to Dish subscribers, said David Gibber, Senior VP and General Counsel at Sinclair. And if Sinclair and Dish fail to reach a retransmission agreement, Dish subscribers will lose access to 108 broadcast stations via their satellite service. They'll also lose the tennis channel, which is owned by Sinclair. Dish has about 3.5 million subscribers in Sinclair markets. So I think the bigger thing is the local broadcast stations. I mean, there are probably a few niche customers in there that when the tennis channel goes away, they'll be complaining. But the complaints are going to be the local stations, because that's one of the reasons that people are keeping their pay TV service. That's a big part. There's live sports, which is not available everywhere, and then there's your local broadcast stations. You want to be able to tune in and watch the local news. You want to be able to watch Jeopardy, those kinds of things that maybe you're only on your local channel. So that's going to be, I think, the big impact, and that's a lot of broadcast stations that would be impacted by this. And in the past, Dish has been not very fast to respond. They've been trying to hold the line, and that may be why Sinclair has come out and extended this. They may have seen that Dish has not been very willing to accept these new agreements. And a lot of times it is. Honestly, these cable operators and satellite operators and whatnot, pay TV operators, they are kind of in a difficult place because they have the direct relationship with the consumer, so they're seen as the bad guy in all cases. So they're kind of in a lose-lose situation, because what happens is these programming operators will raise their prices for these various channels, and they'll make it difficult. You've got to, if you want the one channel that a lot of people want, you got to accept 3 other channels that maybe not a lot of people want, like maybe tennis channel. Or some other things that people don't necessarily want. So they wind up having to then raise their price to the consumer, and the customers get mad at the cable company because they've raised the price, or they get mad at the cable pay TV provider because suddenly there's 108 broadcast stations that are not available. So they're probably in the hardest situation right here. So I imagine Dish and some of these other operators are are trying as much as they can to hold the line and keep these prices down. And frankly, with the options that people have now with streaming services, it is difficult to raise the price. That's why a lot of people are cutting the cord. The most often reason that people claim that they're cutting the cord is for price. So we'll see what happens here with Dish. If they are able to work this out, we'll see who blinks. And if it does wind up being a blackout, we'll see who blinks again, who blinks first and ends it, or if it ever ends. We'll have to see. Dish is a pay TV provider along with DirecTV that have got a limited lifespan. With broadband becoming more and more critical and streaming services, getting your TV through satellite is less and less interesting. So people can now, once they get a good broadband connection, they can get that through streaming. And with services like Starlink up there and all of this fiber broadband deployment, we're going to see people be streaming more and more and maybe cutting the cord more if the prices continue to go up. So we'll see what happens. Well, thanks for joining me today. I hope this was helpful for you. And if so, if you like this video, then just go on to YouTube there and click the thumbs up and subscribe if you're not subscribed. I'm here once a week at 3 o'clock. When you do subscribe, click the little bell and you will be notified when I am live or when we post a video. Thanks for joining me. And I'll see you next week for Tech Tuesday. Bye-bye. Did you learn anything?